Welcome, golf fans, pursuers of knowledge in the almighty dollar. This is your golf guru bringing you the 2023 3M Open. This is my Before the Lock show where we go over new custom stat models. I'm going to talk about the weather. Got all kinds of information to share with you guys. So give me about 20, 30 minutes. Of course, we'll go over ownership projections for you and all that good stuff to make sure you are ready before you lock in those final DFS lineups or maybe some final bet thoughts. So with that said, let's go talk a little golf. Okay, so real quick, if you didn't see this, I thought it was kind of a cool story. Of course, my buddy Eric Van Rooyen, his caddy Alex, and I'm going to mess up this last name, I believe he's French, Gougert, playing together at the 3M Open. He used to have like a big man bun, so it's kind of interesting to see that he's got short hair now. But long story short, yeah, I think he shot a 65 to Monday qualify. So EVR tweeted out that looking for somebody to be his caddy. And I'm not sure who actually stepped up for that, but I'm sure he found someone. And those two actually are playing together and are teeing off at 3 p.m. tomorrow for round one. So where I was interested in this is that I'm curious to see how EVR shoots. Playing with your caddy, of course, there's going to be some competitive juices flowing. And you don't want to get beat by your caddy, or EVR will be caddying for Alex. So anyways, long story short, I just thought that was an interesting story. And if you didn't know, just something I thought I'd share. Okay, so let's talk about the weather. It's looking a little gloomy, to say the least, for at least Thursday, Friday, from a chance of thunderstorms. Of course, I'm located in the Midwest, and we are also looking to see some heat. It's been humid, and I guess it's been kind of a scorcher there. It's supposed to be 94 degrees there tomorrow in Blaine, Minnesota, which is kind of rare. We've actually been, I'd say, seasonably cool for the last couple weeks, but it looks like we're going to get a little douse of heat. But then it looks like a cool front will come in. I think it's Friday night. But anyways, we'll look into the super forecast on Wind Finder because it's a little interesting from a wind perspective. But right now you got gust up to 16 on Thursday. And then for round two, you got gust up to 20, and then 16 and 16 over the weekend. But again, hopefully we avoid the electricity because, as we all know in fantasy golf, nothing's worse than delays. Hopefully everything gets played on time. Okay, so the PGA, actually, they provide this stuff usually right before. And it's kind of just some course stats that are sometimes interesting, sometimes not. But I found a couple here interesting, so I built some custom stat models around it. I thought the one that was, two of them that was the most interesting was outside on your approach shot coming in from 100 yards out. It's one of the tougher, third toughest courses to get close to the pin, is the shortest thing it's saying. So on average, about 19 and a half feet, about 19 and a half feet, we'll call it that, is the average proximity, which if you look down here, Riviera would be the hardest. Then, of course, they play the Valero at TPC San Antonio. Of course, where we're at today for this weekend, the 3M Open at TPC Twin Cities. You got Pebble Beach, which I have to believe that's got to be just because of how small the greens are. And then, of course, Southern Hills, where I believe they just played the PGA Championship. I don't know, was it over a couple of years ago? That's where JT won, I believe. And then the other one that was the second most interesting, of course, is we already discussed quite a bit in the preview show, is this course actually owns the most balls in the water. They call out specifically 18 and number 2 that has the most. And then, of course, you've got where the Hondas played, the PGA National. You got the Players at TPC Sawgrass. You got Jack's Place at Murfield Village for the Memorial. And then you've got the Waste Management, TPC Scottsdale. So I ran a couple models with that information kind of pointing out. And so if you look at this one, I almost kind of call this, again, this would be my KISS model, keep it simple, stupid. But I really increased off the tee and fairways gained. So that's 40% of the model is guys that are hitting the fairway and also have some distance. So off the tee is length with also hitting the fairway. And then I doubled down and put 20% on fairways gain. Of course, I mentioned in the preview show that approach is king here, as it typically is on every course. The guys that are best with the irons, and this proximity 175 to 200 shows up over 20% of the time. And if you kind of walk through some of the holes on these long par fours, it makes sense. And then the other one that was stating that typically guys are going to be averaging around 20 feet on their putts. So I put the putter rating or weighting for stroke gain at between 15 and 20 at 50%. So long story short, if you do that and you look over the last 24 rounds of golf, also here you'll see their tee times already showing for the first round. Substraka comes up number 1. There's, of course, no filters turned on. This is just looking at the last 24 rounds or 6 tournaments they played. JJ Spawn, number 2, Emiliano Grillo, Lucas Glover, Cam Champ, one of your past champions here. Ches Reavy, Dougie Gim, Austin Eckroat, Hideki Matsuyama, Woodland, Hadwin, Palmer, Aaron Rye, Justin Lauer, and Scott Piercy. And that's the top 15 guys, again, against those kind of key stats. Also kind of my model that I wanted to kind of hone in. And funny enough, that group of 15 players are a lot of them, I'd say almost like 95% of them are who I picked yesterday for my DFS pick. So I feel pretty good about that. And then I took, as I mentioned, about those 5 courses that were, very similar on some of these stats, mostly just on the water balls. Of course, again, that's where they play the Players, the Honda, Waste Management, and I'm probably forgetting one of those. With all that said, against that same model, adding in the birdies, proximity got turned down a little bit. I believe the putting got turned down a little bit. Took that, put 10% into guys that make birdies. So almost the same model, but adding in a little bit of scoring. Substraka number 1, Sunjay M, Adam Hanwood, Tony Finau, Kevin Roy, but you got to watch. It's only 4 rounds of golf on those courses. Again, this is looking against comparable courses on that specific with a lot of water in play. Dougie Gim, Hideki Matsuyama, JT, Dylan Wu, Tom Hoagie, Adam Svensson, Eric Cole, Austin Smotherman, Mark Hubbard, and Russell Knox are your top 15 players against this model and weightings on those comp courses that I just discussed. So again, sometimes when I see certain stats that come out about the course, I like to kind of just do a little more diving in and share that with you guys. Okay, and then the next thing I want to go over with you guys is, I mentioned yesterday the average score is somewhere between 15 to 20 under in that ballpark. It's sounding like more and more this is going to be a little bit more of a score fest. Listen to some of the pressers. You had JT yesterday, Finau, and Billy Ho. Also saw on Twitter there was some kid throwing the ball in the rough. And even though what I received from the PGA superintendent sheets was that the rough was actually going to be up this year to 4 inches, but at least the area that this kid was throwing the ball, it did not look nowhere near 4 inches. It looked like 2 inches. So if that is actually the rough, then that the scoring should be very low. It looks like the course is also very receiving, but also mentioned that the greens are rolling. It seems very fast, but that's because a lot of these guys, right, have spent a couple weeks over in Europe and put it on those greens, which were running around 10. So that is going to be quite a bit of difference. Anyways, with that in mind, needing to go maybe possibly 20 or better under, I did my showdown model for you here, and that is all looking at scoring. And all this is looking over the past 24 rounds, again, 6 tournaments, same thing. And I'm looking at weighting how many birdies were made over that time period at 50%, eagles at 15, birdie or better. So again, that is birdie or eagles at 20%. So it's getting the opportunity to actually not converting, but at least you're getting the opportunities. And then last but not least, trying to avoid those bogeys, which takes points away from us. And with that said, if you're curious, again, funny enough, Substraka comes up number 1, which of course has had a win and also, of course, the second at the Open. You got Lucas Glover, Vincent Norman also with a recent win at the Barbasol. You got Eric Cole, Emiliano Grillo, Peter Quest, that Monday qualifier. That's kind of a Cinderella story, again, that I was on. Geez, I'm going to forget now which tournament. But, of course, he did well at the Byron Nelson, then Monday qualified again for, I can't remember, and actually had a chance to win. You got Austin Eckroat, Nikolai Horgaard, Ludwig Eberg, Brandon Wu, Aaron Rye, Mark Hubbard, Dougie Gim, Cam Davis, and Carson Young. So again, I mean, DFS is all about who gets the most points. Sometimes it's not about just where you finish in position. And so some of these guys could outpace, even though maybe they end up with like a T20, but maybe they outscore guys that are in a T10 or something like that. So just a side note, if you want to know guys that typically have been going low over the last 6 tournaments, 24 rounds, that's your guys. And then with an eye towards Showdown, if you're like me, I play quite a bit of Showdown. Probably that instant gratification thing. I do like to get the money the day of instead of waiting all the way to Sunday to see how you do. And if you're curious, for round 1 only, if you want to look at the past 8 rounds of round 1 until the last 8 tournaments, looking at the first round against that same Showdown model, who has done the best. And why I put this, because some guys do come out hot. I have seen it where guys, I mean, it is a little bit about, of course, what time your tee time is, but some guys do typically open up well and then sometimes struggle in round 2. You got Eric Cole leading, Harry Hall, Nate Lashley, Mark Hubbard, Bryce Garnett, Sam Bennett, Chesson Hadley, Emiliano Grillo, Stefan Yeager, Sean O'Hare, Samuel No, Cody Gribble, Andrew Novak, Lucas Glover, and Justin Suh are your top 15 guys over the last 8 tournaments for round 1 that have been scoring the best. All right, I mentioned I've been watching some pressers. I listened to JT's yesterday, and actually kind of something I was kind of thinking of, but I really didn't think a whole lot. But the more I thought about it, I'm like, there could be something in. So this is a bit of a narrative, right? The open hangover. So these guys, literally some of them, most of these guys, made it to Sunday, right? Had to jump on a plane, probably got to Minnesota sometime on Monday because I think you actually lose time. I think you gain time flying over. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, so they would have lost time and got in sometime Monday, and probably, everyone I heard was playing like 9 holes, and then the Pro-Am today, they're going to play 9 holes. So could there be an open hangover? Maybe I'll build some lineups, but I want to just show the guys that did play in the Open that are also in the 3M Open, and also have the guys that got to leave on Saturday. So that was right. So a lot of these guys that were there till Sunday definitely probably didn't get on grounds till maybe Tuesday today or Wednesday. So just a side note, there could be some hangover. We've already saw a couple of draws. Can't think off the top of my head, but there was a couple of draws that guys just decided not to play that came out of the Open. But anyways, against my full model that we were using during the preview show, larger custom stat model. If you want to see the rankings of guys that played in the Open and are also playing in the free Open. Of course, you got Seb Straka, who came in second. You had Emiliano Grillo, who I believe came in like 6th, tied for 6th. Gary Woodland, Hideki, 20 Finau, JT, Nikolai Horgaard, Cameron Young, Ryan Fox, Seabez, Sahith Theegala, Tom Hoge, Sanjay M. Ben Griffin, I was going to look into this. I'm so curious on how he made the Open. Maybe he wouldn't qualify while he was at the Scottish. I have no clue. But it definitely wasn't on world ranking. And of course, he's a rookie and he hasn't won a tournament or anything. So not really sure how Ben Griffin did, but he was in the Open. You got Alex Noren, Stuart Sink, who actually had a pretty decent finish, Joel Damon, and Matty Wallace. Now, the next thing I wanted to know, and I apologize, but I wanted to get this a little bigger, was the guys that missed the cut that are also in this tournament. And what does that mean? Well, they should be fresher, right? I mean, again, as I mentioned with JT, he got into Minnesota on Monday, and I got to play a practice round. So anyways, Tony Finau missed a cut, a guy that I was on, JT. Sahith Theegala, a guy that I was not on, who's missed back-to-back cuts over in the UK. Tom Hoge missed a cut, Ben Griffin, and Matty Wallace, all in the 3M Open, but did play in the Open, but missed a cut, and should be, in theory, a little more orientated to the time change and got some sleep and back on schedule. All right, well, all that said, let's go jump over into Fantasy National. Let's go look at ownership projection, and then we'll check out a win finder just to show you where I'm going to be pulling my data during the tournament and see if there's anything there that we might want to look at round 1, or maybe some flight advantages. What I noticed was nothing right now is telling me there's going to be a flight advantage, but so I didn't really build a model for you guys for that. So anyways, okay, let's go to Fantasy National. Okay, so I've hopped over to Fantasy National so we can check out ownership projections. Again, using DraftKings salary, so if it looks different than what you're looking at from FanDuel, that is what's going to happen. And the number that we're looking at here is this generated lineups. Again, if you don't know what that is, if you use Fantasy National, you can build 150. You can build a ton of different lineups, automate it, pump it into an Excel file, and then you get it into DraftKings, and that's how you do the 150 lineups that a lot of people do. They like to max things out. And so this is the number we're getting right now of actual generated lineups that have happened. So that is also where we're going to look over here, this actual FNGC Fantasy National Golf Club lineup generated. That is the number. And it's kind of funny. A lot of the guys, of course, are going to be pretty chalky. I think it's kind of interesting. So the guys at the top, as I just kind of stated, you can make a lot of arguments, just where they've been with their game, but also then coming over from the Open that you might want to pass. And it wouldn't shock me that maybe the top, I don't know, top 5 guys on DFS, and even from a betting standpoint, do not have a good showing here. And so I'm going to build some lineups accordingly, as I kind of even stated in the preview show that, I was kind of starting at Hideki, but I'd probably even start lineups at Emiliano Grillo, even though he did come over. I'm actually kind of more interested. I was not picking a Ludwig Aberg, but I'm actually now, the more of course, you saw him on my cover or thumbnail, that the more I started to think about this whole Open hangover, that, you know what, maybe I skip a lot of the top guys that came over, and, Ludwig, of course, was here, should be fresh, and Yeah, like I said, his irons haven't been as great, but everything else, I really like what he does with the driver and can, be very on and off of the putter. So, anyways, with that said, but of course, I did see his ownership is right now the highest. So, I guess some other people are having those same kind of thoughts, even though that price tag is quite a bit to swallow for someone that's played, I don't know, 4 or 5 tournaments, but has shown very well so far. So, anyways, if you want to look at the ownership projection right now, as I mentioned, the highest owned is Ludwig Aberg. And then let's go by salary. Looks like number 2 would actually be Sunjay M. Of course, again, I mentioned he did make the cut and was coming back. So he probably got in Tuesday to Minnesota, best case. Funny enough, your returning champion, Tony Finau, is not getting much love. So if you want to change course, and get a little contrarian, he's less than 10% owned. You got Cam Young at 20, almost 21%. Seb Straka at 20%. And then I mentioned Ludwig. Emiliano Grillo would be next. So that's your kind of highest owned guys. JT, less than 10%. And so, again, I thought about this last night. I listened to the presser. I always stated that, these guys are not as far away from, playing good golf. And, JT, of course, had a good showing at the Travelers. It's had kind of like those Jekyll and Hyde rounds at the majors. We just saw it at the Open with an 82, and then he goes out and shoots even the next day under actually tougher conditions. I mean, what I'm getting to is, of course, in the large GPP 150 lineup, 200K to first, you might want to maybe throw together a JT Tony Finau build if you want to be different than the field. And if you can make a lot of arguments that you get the past champion, won 4 times in the past, year and a half. Tony Finau, of course, JT, you can make a lot more argument for on why you'd want to pass. But again, to get that differentiation, and if all of a sudden something clicks and he starts making putts and he's not putting the ball in the water, you could have something. All right. Anyways, Gary Woodland, you got a 15. You got Stefan Jaeger, pretty high up there. If you see a star, those are the picks I was picking. So I've got quite a bit of chalky stuff. I did mention I'm going to go with Ludwig. And I am not picking Tony Finau, so I'm not sure why that is. JT, I'm also not picking, but I did have a Hideki and Grillo, so maybe some of these didn't transfer over. Killer Keith around is who's low? JJ Spawn, which was one of my picks. I'm interested in that. I think for the price tag, a lot of people are struggling, but for this course, the one thing JJ Spawn typically does, which we saw him do at the Valero, is that he hits a ton of fairways. He's not long and can get pretty hot with the irons, but I do like him. At least where he's shown it, the putting does show up typically on Bermuda. That's where he won, but still, he's had some good finishes here of late. Our buddy Patrick Rogers, kind of shocked at this, but again, maybe a lot of people didn't see what he did at the Barracuda. Should have won that tournament. But so I definitely be playing some Patrick Rogers. Bo Hosler also had a good Barracuda, less than 4%. Aaron Rise, pretty chalky. Nikolai Horgaard, as I mentioned, I believe he did make the cut. He actually had a pretty good showing. Let's go see. I think he ended up like 20th at the Open, 23rd. So again, pretty good showing for Nikolai Horgaard. Also has got some length off the tee. I like Eric Cole. I even had this thought, the more and more about if you just compare PGA National, the Honda Classic, to this course, and you think about this field, it is very similar when, of course, Chris Kirk and Eric Cole went to a playoff. Chris Kirk won. But if you remember the guys that are up top, like I've actually started to think like, hey, some of these guys I might put in a lineup like the Eric Cole. You had Gerard, who Monday qualified for that. I think ended up like 3rd or 4th, something like that. Ryan Gerard's less than 2% owned. And as I stated, he had a 4th. So he ended up 4th. He was in 3rd for quite a while there. Had a pretty good showing at Puerto Rico. Pretty good John Deere. Missed a cut at the Barbasol, but did have a good, the Barracuda is not showing up. He did have a good showing at the Barracuda. Anyways, long story short, I think that's kind of an interesting thought process too, to kind of leverage what happened at the Honda. Because again, you can make a lot of similarities, right? I mean, even I believe that the Honda's a tougher tournament, tougher track, but there is, out of the 2 courses that I think they play that have the most water, it would be PGA National and of course the 3M. Okay, moving along. See anything else sticks out to me? JT Poston getting a little more love than usual. Lucas Glover. I mean, when did I ever think Lucas Glover would be one of the chalkiest players? Guy that I've been on all year. I'm always on, like I said, because I know his talent, and I told you he's got a little more confidence with that new putter, and not really new. I mean, he's had it pretty much probably most of this year, but new to him over his career. I mentioned Vincent Norman coming off the win at the Barbasol. Yeah, Bo. There's Nikolai. Taylor Pendrith is actually someone I'm kind of interested in. I did pick him. More and more I think about it, and I just keep thinking back to what he's done on bent greens. That, you know, if you do have length and you hit fairways, what is his accuracy? So he's not the most accurate. What's he been doing off the tee? He always gains. So he's been off the tee. He's been good, and the irons have been firing. So he's in good form. We'll see. See if that translates. I think bet him at 90-1. I think I had, if I remember correctly. Akshay Bhatia, of course, I mentioned, is pulled out of the tournament. He was that's because he just had the win. I'm trying to think who the guy is that pulled out that was coming across from Europe, and I haven't dawned on me yet. Austin Eckrow. I think Tom Hoagie's an interesting play. We'll take a look again at Tom. He does a lot of things that I like. He's just been in a little bad form. Off the tee has still been hurting, but he did have a good showing at the Genesis. Of course, the Players I mentioned as that as a pretty good comp course from a water perspective. It came out with a pretty good form. I mean, if we look at it, and then it seems like it kind of fell apart here midsummer, but maybe something's coming back. I mean, one of the better iron players on tour typically. Seabez getting no love. He's one that's coming across the pond, but I believe missed the cut. Dougie Gam I picked. Peter Quest was one of my picks. Garrick Hago has found better form. I think Adam Svensson, this is a perfect course, but he has been a little bit struggling. But you can see it's gotten a little better. But, you know, 40th a miscut, a 60th a miscut. But recent results a little better. Of course, he got his first one at the RSM, which I didn't even think about that. But that's also, I think, a really good comparable course from a, you know, again, a water perspective. What's his ownership at? Adam Svensson. I'm going to play some Svensson, I think, now. I think I talked myself into it. Ches Reavie, Lee Hodges, Brandon Wu was one of my picks. Grayson Sig had a good showing here last year. Ryan Palmer's shown a little bit of life. I feel like he's fallen a little bit, but he had a couple tournaments there where everybody, even myself, got a little excited. So, yeah, he's got a good showing at the Byron, kind of back-to-back. I mean, nothing great. Again, the putter, you know, ball striking the crap out of it. But, again, the putter, he needs to go to a long putter. Not sure why. Oh, some of these are, I know what's going on. Some of these that are highlighted were the guys that came across from the Open. I do like Will Gordon. Let's go take a look at him. I think, again, if you're looking for a differentiator, he's got the distance, pretty accurate, pretty good ball striker. The irons have been suspicious. The putter has always kind of been a problem. And he had some nice, he had a little run here, again, to kind of kick off, I don't know, coming out of the fall swing season. Good showing at the RBC and then the Genesis. So, again, I think somebody that you could think about if you're trying to make a little switch up. Billy Ho and his presser was saying again that, you know, hey, he's feeling a lot better, just the scoring's not showing it, but you say that all the time. I mean, it's probably what we hear from a lot of guys that's in a bit of a funk. Luke List is the guy I was thinking about that pulled out of the tournament that did play in the Open. Oh, no, he didn't play in the Scottish. I don't know. Oh, he actually has an injury. I think he has a wrist thumb injury or whatever, so I take that back. There is somebody I saw that I'm pretty sure pulled out due to, just can't think of who it was. Carson Young at 6.6. He's been scoring pretty well. Then where's Colin Tarrant? I thought I just saw him. Same thing. So those guys are about the same exact percent owned, but both have been kind of on my radar. They've been kind of my plays down in the 6,000 range. I do like Ryan Gerard too, especially at that ownership. James Hahn had a really nice, it's not going to show up here, Barracuda, but he's been gaining, typically a good ball striker. It's the putter, but you know, the putter is not at least losing 5 or 6 strokes. Let me see something here for him. Let's do it a little different because I don't remember off the top of my head. Yeah, he had a 4th here last year. That is interesting. James Hahn. What's his ownership? Less than 1%. Might be another play for you down below 7,000 if you're interested. Could be not too bad. And I do remember him going in Fuego. I guess he was right there with Scott Piercy. I also forget, I mentioned the Scott Piercy blow up last year. Then it was what on the back nine, and it was funny. Tony Finau was talking about where he was like 4 or 5 shots behind the whole time, and then all of a sudden he like looked up at the leaderboard. And he was like 4 shots ahead, and that was again because of Piercy's blow up. So it was on Sunday. It was not on Saturday. I was confused. And there's our buddy Scott Piercy there, who had the issues. So take a look at that real quick here. So if I go to the 3M Open, I'm gonna click on that. Somehow, well, I guess it doesn't show tees. So first round leader was Sungjae M, Scott Piercy. Then Scott Piercy shot a 64. Colin Tarrant had a 63. Then we go to 3. I got to do this. I don't know why, but this is just the way it works. All right, so Sig had a 64. I'm just seeing what Scott Piercy. Yeah, shot a 66. There you go. And then on Sunday, shot that 76. And I'm guessing, who shot the lowest round on round 4? I'm guessing it was Finau. James Hahn had a pretty good weekend, and then Finau had a 67. All right, so I just, little something to look at there. So my buddy EBR. There you go, 0.2. Bryce Garnett, Kevin Roy was one of my picks. He's at almost 4%. I don't think there's anybody else that I'm super concerned with. Oh, what's Trevor Cohn? I think he was one of my picks that should be pretty low. 5% for Trevor Cohn at 6,800. So you want to get off that, maybe play a little James Hahn. All right, I think that gives you a good idea of the ownership. Let's go real quick, jump over to Windfinder. And where I'm pulling from is Crystal Airport. It's the closest location to Blaine, Minnesota, where these guys will be playing. If I hit Super Forecast, this will break it down by the hour. We're going to skip Wednesday. We don't care about that. It's just hot there. Also, we got those Canadian fire, air, whatever, smoke left over. So that is been kind of showing up the last couple of days. This is what was kind of interesting. When was this pulled? 4:40 a.m. local time. So it's kind of odd. Whenever I see this where it shows that the winds could be stronger in the morning, kind of chilling out in the afternoon, I get a little suspicious. But supposedly that's when the thunderstorms could come. So I don't know. I'm going to keep an eye on this. Right now, technically, let's see, round 4. And it's saying winds in the morning again, which is just interesting. Because really, yeah, like I said, I just could not figure out really a flight advantage. I mean, you could do an afternoon and hope that, the morning is what it typically is. But I'd be shocked if the winds are stronger in the morning. I feel like Windfinder predicts that, or the model predicts, and it just never happens. So anyways, long story short, you want to pull up Crystal Airport. I don't really have a whole lot else that I'm going to do with that information. Like I said, I'm just going to watch it from Showdown to see if there's anything I need to keep an eye on. All right, with that said, let's jump out and wrap this thing up. All right, guys, thanks again for spending some time with me as always. And if you do me the honor, click that like button, share it with anybody else. And if you're not subscribed, the subscribe base is growing and growing. So I really appreciate that. And if you are, just kind of checking me out for the first time, typically I put 2 to 3 shows out. More, it's kind of been lately 2 shows, probably as the summer's here. We're also starting to, look a little bit on the football side. Been doing quite a bit of best ball, which I'm guessing some of you guys also. And hit me up on Twitter, or now called X, whatever it is. I'm always going to call it Twitter. If you want to follow me, like I said, I don't tweet a whole lot, but I do for the tournament keep an eye on anything relevant that comes out from withdrawals or anything of note that I think you guys might need to see. I'll either retweet it from somebody else or create it myself. All right, guys, enjoy the 3M Open. We've only got this and then the Wyndham. That's the end of the regular season. And then we got the FedEx playoffs. And then we're done until the swing season. So enjoy the golf, and I'll talk to you guys later. Have a great weekend.